Hi, this is Gavin with Haverstick Designs, and this is the Sound Project. So I'm here today with my good friend Eric Sills. Thanks so much for joining us. We're on location actually at Stone Soup Recording, and this is one of our early projects. Like I think we were introduced in 2010.
2010.
Yeah, when you're getting ready to build this place, and man, it's so amazing to be back here and also see all the things that you've been doing over the last 13 years now.
I bought a couple books on acoustics and very quickly realized I'm not going to be an acoustician, so that led me to you.
Nice. So we're in Maumee, Ohio. Did I pronounce that right?
Yep.
Okay, good. I always feel like I mess it up, but yeah, Maumee, Ohio, and
I usually say, well, we're an hour south of Detroit.
okay, that's an easy thing. If I don't feel like I'm going to get it right. So, but yeah, this is well. First, let's talk about a little bit about your background, how you got into music, and tell us the story.
I like a lot of the musicians I work with. My musical background came from the public school system.
Oh yeah.
I played French horn from 5th grade through my freshman year in college. I was a performance major on French horn.
Okay.
And I started playing drums also in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to be a touring and freelance drummer. And I needed something to fall back on just in case. So I switched to electronic technology and actually became an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
So this came out of the combination of electrical engineering and a somewhat musical background.
Yeah.
So I was in an accident in 2003, ended up in a wheelchair. So drumming's kind of out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't get any volume out of my kick drum anymore. And my son was interested in recording, and this project grew out of all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when we got introduced, and you had mentioned that this was music was something you bonded with your son over,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when we did the project, you sent me some initial photos of the space, and I still, when I give presentations and I talk about the studio, I show before and after photos, and in every one of those photos, your son is given the rock symbol, you know, and I just loved it because he was so excited about it, and it was just such a cool project to be involved with because I knew it was going to be something that you and your son would enjoy, and is he still into music?
He is. We still go to concerts quite a bit. In the last couple of years, pre and then post COVID, we saw Iron Maiden. He took me to see Polyphia, who you did their guitar player's studio.
Yeah.
Tim Henson's studio. And we go see shows quite a bit.
Cool.
We saw Ginger in Detroit. So yeah, we still relate over music quite a bit.
That's awesome.
I'm much more of a jazz person than he is, and he's much more of a progressive metal person than I am. But we like both of those styles of music together. So
nice. Where was Polyphia playing at that you saw them?
We saw them at a hall in Detroit.
Okay.
The name of which I'm not going to remember.
No.
We saw Ginger at St. Andrews, but Polyphia was at a different hall in Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, we went to the Indianapolis show. The staff, we all went and checked it out. It was a really good show. I mean, those guys are ridiculous players.
Insane
obviously.
players.
So it sounds like you grew up playing music for forever, and then did you ever think you'd own a studio? Was that like a dream that you wanted to do?
You know, I didn't. I took rec tech, or recording techniques, or they called it rec tech, when I was at Bowling Green State University. It was a 1-semester class at that time, and that was it.
Yeah.
You had that, and then there was an electronic music, which is a 1-semester class. And I mainly did that so that if I was playing drums, I would be able to relate to the people on the other side of the glass better.
Sure.
So when my son wanted to take a recording camp and he was a little bit too young to get in, it was like, oh, we'll get a Linux distro, start recording at home. And we recorded some of his friends' bands. And it was like, I remember why I liked Rec Tech. I liked analog recording on tape. And it just kind of grew out of that. I didn't have a laser beam focus to being a studio owner, But now that I am, I think I found my calling.
Yeah, yeah. Um, when you were looking to, okay, so what made you decide like, okay, I'm gonna get a commercial space and like try to make a go at it? Like, what was there a switch that flipped that you're just like, I'm really gonna go for this?
You know what? My lovely wife, Sandra, it, she was like, you're kind of good at that. You should try that as a business,
Yeah.
which her encouragement kind of led to this. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about buying a commercial building.
Hmm.
The original idea was to do it in our house, but she's like, if you're going to have freaky, weirdo rock and roll people over here at 2 a.m, do it as a
Yeah.
business. I mean, there's always an investment opportunity there for the land and the building
Yeah.
too. So that's kind of the way it came out of that.
Yeah. Well, we have that in common because I'm an engineer. I don't like to take risks, and so when it came to like maybe starting this business, I was on the fence, but my wife was the one pushing me over it, and because she was just like, "Man, you do a great job, and this is an opportunity for you to really kind of spread your wings a little bit." So
I mean, I don't know if she feels the same way now when another box from one of the retailers shows up with a new microphone in it. Do you really need that? But,
you say you started this.
hey, it's your fault, right?
That's awesome. So you found this property. Did you look at a lot of different spaces? Because when you contacted me, you'd already purchased this. So.
Actually, I talked to you before we signed on the final dotted
Oh,
line.
okay.
A friend of mine, Dave Fogel, who's a great drummer here in town, he and I would get in the car and just drive around and look for sale signs for commercial real estate. And this place came up for sale like within spitting distance of our house.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious, but within rolling distance of our house.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was going to work with you, and I called you up and said, this is what this place looks like. This is what the outside walls are made of. You're like, if you can get that, go for it.
Yeah.
So it was the right size at the time for where we were starting out, and you approved the construction. So
Yeah.
that's how we picked this. But we looked for maybe 6 months
Okay.
to a year before, just driving around looking at commercial properties.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the type of time where it's good to land on the right spot, because sometimes people will jump into a location and just live with all the compromises, and it's not quite right for them, or it's too far away from their house, but they just want it right now. And so I think that is it's great that you found this place. And I mean, and we did this 3-room studio. There's a lounge and bathroom and things like that, and machine room, but it's mostly control room, live room, vocal booth. And you had that for, was it 7 years? Well, no, probably 9 years or so.
9 years, yeah.
And then we actually built onto it.
The expansion.
Yeah, so there's like 3 more rooms that you needed. Well, tell me about like when you first started, because I mean, you've kind of become like a bit of a destination spot for a lot of bands in the Midwest here to come and record, and you just got more and more busy, and you needed extra space. So
I do a lot of jazz. That's a style of music jazz is all encompassing. Jazz fusion, anything improvisational, and a lot of classical too. I know it's a thing now where a lot of people say, we want to get everybody in the same room. I'm an isolation guy. I've always been an isolation guy, but I also want the musicians to feel like they're playing together in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I asked about you when we did the expansion is I want to get the people isolated from each other, but have them feel like they're playing in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was the main goal for that. I wanted to be able to get drums away from upright bass.
Yeah.
Upright bass is a challenging enough instrument to record by itself without, the drummer banging away in the background, bleeding into those microphones.
Sure.
So between the piano, upright bass, and drums, which was the core rhythm section for a lot of what I do, calling you up and saying, I need to add on, but I want them to feel like they're together. That was the impetus for that.
Yeah, and I really like how it turned out because, we have one larger room than 2 ISO booths, but you have good sight lines and be able to see each other, and then you can have video for the sight lines that don't work.
If there's a sight line that doesn't work, yeah, we can I have cameras in every room, and then screens we can just move around and plop down in front of a person.
Yeah. How how do people find out about you typically? Is it word of mouth, or do you do advertising, or how does that work?
I haven't done that much advertising. There are times when people will come to me and say, we have a benefit concert, or we're doing a show, would you like to sponsor it? And I'll do some things like that. I've done a little bit of radio advertising when people call me up and say, hey, we can get you on the radio for the small price of $19.95. It's 99% been word of mouth.
Yeah.
Somebody likes what they resulted in and play it for somebody else, and they'll look on it and say, okay, well, I got to find that guy.
Yeah, nice. How many artists do you work with that are local to the Maumee area versus like coming in regionally?
Maumee area, because we're right on the south side of Toledo, I'll encompass Toledo in that. There are a number of people who are, Toledo's a great area for musicians. One of my great friends and a great musician I've worked with a lot, Chris Shutters, who's now the lead singer in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, actually. Done several projects with him. There's a Dave Fogel, great drummer, Glass City All Stars, Amelia Earhart's, all these great bands that are local, who are branching out and starting to make waves that I've done projects with. But now it's a lot of people from Detroit coming down. So between Detroit, Ann Arbor, Maumee, that's probably 90% of it.
Yeah, and Detroit's only like an hour.
About an hour away.
Okay, that's nice. To have that community there, and yeah, the word kind of just spreads when you hear a good record and you want to know where it's done. So, tell me about as far as like the gear that you use, and like I know that you say that boxes show up at your house often, so it's like getting new gear is super fun. What's your kind of main go-to pieces that you use?
I will always have a Jones for a large format console, but right now I can't justify it, and I don't know what it would do for me that I'm not already doing. So I'm Pro Tools HDX or Ultimate or whatever they're calling it this week.
Yeah.
That's the main DAW that I use. I have used Reaper in the past, but I was doing some stuff where we would track it here and it was mixed elsewhere, LA or Chicago. So just use Pro Tools and get it over with, right?
Sure.
My converters are all analog audio. Pre's, I love the Hairball Audio Lolas for drums. That's if I could only have one pre, that's the one. I love that pre. And then there are a couple other specialized pre's. The Universal Audio LA610, I use that for vocals most of the time. So that's mostly the front end.
Yeah.
As you know, you've seen this place through 3 different sets of monitors, but these were my dream monitors for years, and they came up with a deal that I couldn't beat, so I had to get them.
Nice. And then we also have the Trinov system in here, the ST2 Pro, and that's a game changer too. I know that you had been working in the studio for years before you got the Trinov, and that was what was that experience like for you?
Well, let me say, first of all, the Trinov is the icing on the cake. And you were the cake, and you got me 90% of the way there. But what you told me in the very beginning is be aware that in a control room this size, there will always be a primary resonance at about 100 hertz or 150 hertz, and then there's a dip right after that. There's no way around that. So you're doing the car check, going out and checking your low end in the car and coming in and tweaking stuff. You and I spoke about ways to fix that low end lump. And you said, you might want to check out this company called Trinov. They have some really neat stuff going. So I talked to my sales rep at Vintage King, and he sent me a unit, and he says, if you don't like it, send it back. But I can guarantee you're not going to send it back. And he was right. So it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Total mind. I mean, I don't do car checks anymore.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing to have that unit, turn it on.
Yeah.
And if you bypass it and listen, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because it does so many things, not only the EQ changes, but then also just the time alignment of the speakers and the imaging that pops out. And it's one of those things where in a good room, what's great is that the turnout doesn't have to work too hard. You know, like if you put it in a room with no treatment, then it's I've heard some people say that it just sounds a little unnatural, and so in a room like this that's well treated, it's it
definitely not a replacement for
Right.
for what you do.
Sure.
It's the last 5 or 10%, but man, what a 10% it is.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
And it also became my monitor controller. The La Remote is everything goes through that right into the Barefoots.
Yeah.
Through it's all digital to the Barefoots. So.
Yeah. What speakers did you have before the Barefoots? You had
When I opened the studio in 2011, they were Mackie HR824 Mark IIs.
Yeah.
And then the next upgrade was the Neumann KH310As, which are brilliant speakers, and I still have at home.
Yeah.
I used them on my edit rig at home. These were my dream monitors. Basically, for a recommendation, you were doing a studio in Carmel, Indiana, I believe.
Oh, that was Evansville.
Evansville?
I think that was the one.
And you said, you got to hear these Barefoots. They
Yeah.
are freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it was like, if
Yeah.
they got the Gavin Haverstick seal of approval, I got to get them. But they were my dream monitors.
Yeah, they're really nice. So let's talk a little bit about building the place, like because we get kind of going back to the 2010, like when you really started building it. You got some contractors involved and some people local to the area, and we sent over a set of plans of how to build different wall structures and all of that. But what was that process like as far as you'd never probably built a studio like this before?
Nope.
Yeah.
I'd never built a project period like this. I mean, we build a house, but that's like, go away and come back in 6 months. Who cares? You're right, because it'll be a house when they're done. But there were several contractors that I spoke with, and I would show them the prints, and I was like, well, you don't need all that. All that crap. What do you need that for? We've done stuff like this before. And
That's not what you want.
that's not, if your contractor doesn't dig in and say, oh, this is a cool challenge, this is something that we'll be able to do, then I met through a side project, my main contractor at that time was a guy named Matt Meisner, and he looked at the prints and was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I knew we had the right guy then.
Yeah.
And we would call you up every once in a while and say, hey, how should we do this? How should we do that?
Yeah.
But he built to the plans.
Yeah, Matt was great. That's what I love. I mean, I like it when people give me calls with questions. Like sometimes people feel like, I don't want to bother Gavin with that. Like I want to be bothered. It's like
That's what you're there for.
Yeah, that's what I'm there for. So Matt was awesome because he built not only the rooms, but also some of the, I think he did the diffusers as well.
The diffusers was a friend of mine I've known since kindergarten, actually. His name's John Tomes.
Okay.
He's a Finnish woodworker. That's his thing. He built the console and all of the fine woodwork for the diffusers and the bass trapping.
Yeah. Everyone did just such an excellent job. Like you wouldn't know it's the first time that they'd done something like this. Turned out really awesome. What's the reaction you get from bands that come here for the first time?
The thing I'm going for is I want people to be comfortable and be able to relax. And people come in and they're like, wow, this is a real studio. I was expecting a pile of stuff in somebody's basement.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. But everybody's pretty amazed that this kind of facility is available to them to use in we're not in LA or Miami or New York or Atlanta.
Yeah.
And they're pretty amazed that they come in and this is a real studio.
Yeah.
And then they can just chill out and create.
Right.
Which is, I try to be relaxed about it, Forget watching the clock, forget all that stuff. Just make music. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, no, it's a super comfortable space. And from when you park out front, you don't really know what to expect when you come in. It's probably by design.
Some of that's by design.
Yeah.
Rob me, you don't want to put that on the front of the building. So
yeah, no, it's like, and it seems like you have a lot of return customers too, like the people that come in and record one album, do multiple things.
Yes. One thing I know I need to work on is my turnaround time. I try to, when you start doing this in the very beginning, anybody that comes through the door, you're like, yeah, we'll take it. And pretty soon you've got like 9 things stack up to mix, and everybody's like, come on, where's my stuff? Be cognizant of your time planning. That's always something I'm working on, trying to get better at.
Yeah.
But the most of my people are return clients, or being a jazz focused studio, people will come in and they'll have somebody they bring in to play on their project who's never been here before, and then that person is like, wow, that's great, I want to have you do my next project, and then they bring in people and it sort of balloons out geometrically from there.
Well, and I know that I think it was kind of maybe as a shift you did during COVID was doing some live streaming as well, which that was fun for me to be able to see the studio in action and get to see these amazing players, get to, like you're in their living room playing. So how's that been? Have you continued that since COVID?
Not as much, because everybody is returned to playing. So where we were streaming every Friday and Saturday, at least once a week during COVID, now that COVID's done, maybe a couple times a year since then. But what we have done is transitioned the streaming system so that we can put cameras up and hit record and get ISO stream so they can do promo videos of projects that we're working on. So
that's really nice. I mean, I know that you work with a lot of professional musicians and this is what they do, but I think sometimes you also have people that just want to come in and record a song or two, or like newer musicians. And I think that's great to have that ability to, because I know when I was young and playing music, if I could have stepped into a place like this and tracked something, it probably would just make me even more excited for doing more of that type of work.
I really have a firm commitment to every project. I try to treat everybody the same. If you can't treat the newest, most inexperienced person coming through the door like you would the most powerful artist you're working with, you probably shouldn't take the project.
Yeah.
So you never know when somebody you're working with who's absolutely new at this could be the next big star.
For sure.
So I try to treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Some people who I've worked with will come in the door and you're like, oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, try to get everybody comfortable and get down to work.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you have any artists that you haven't worked with that's like a bucket list thing, like you'd really like to do?
Yes. The guy I wanted to work with as a drummer was a guitar player who's not with us anymore, Alan Holdsworth. He was my guy.
Yeah.
He influenced me. Anybody who could do that with a guitar, that means anybody can do anything with anything, because he was supernatural, and I always wanted to work with him. And a lot of the people who I have on a bucket list, I will find out where they're playing.
Yeah.
Give them a card.
Yeah.
You never know. Well, I mean, I tracked a couple of albums with a band called Marvin from Chicago.
Yeah.
I saw them opening for Holdsworth, and I was like, this is a great band.
Yes.
And I tracked a couple of albums with them. If there's somebody I want to work with, I'll seek them out and give them a card.
Yeah. Don't be shy about it, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst that can happen? They'll say no, you know. So I found the same thing kind of applies with people who are in our business who do something you like the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Rival Sons, Electric Man. I always love that drum sound. I found out who the engineer was and emailed him, and he emailed me back and then said, yeah, here's how we did that. You know, thanks for digging it. I did some projects with female singers who have a sort of raspy voice. And I found out some country singers who have that kind of voice, and I wasn't happy with the results I was getting. Found the engineer who worked with that other person, and he called me back.
Wow.
And said, wow, that's really cool. Nobody knew I did that album. Yeah, we used a Shure SM7B or an RE20 and ran it through a tube pre. And so everybody in this business seems to
like to share knowledge and
share knowledge and reach out. That's the best way, I think.
Yeah, a lot of networking going on. Do you ever seek out an artist individually? Like, I know you reach out to engineers and get information from them, but do you ever hear an artist and just say, like, hey, I want to work with that person?
Marvin was the best example of that.
Yeah.
Then yes, if I will email people quite a bit. I really love the band Dirty Loops. They're mostly working on the West Coast, so I don't think I would have an opportunity to work with them. But that's an example. You can get on their Facebook page. Everybody's on social media now.
Yeah.
Send them a message. Hey, I really love what you guys are doing. Want to work with you sometime. Here's my studio webpage. Make sure they can see that you're serious.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's a lot of guys from Detroit. Dave Bennett, great saxophone player, or great clarinet player and surf rock guitar player, both. I met through a drummer in Ann Arbor, a guy named Pete Sears, who I used to study with. Between the networking and reaching out and saying, that's a guy I want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you hunt them down and say, love to work with you, you may get 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 50, but once you do a good job with them, hopefully that'll expand your
And that's one more than you would have.
That's one more than you would have gotten if you don't try it at all.
Right.
You reach out.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to reach out. I don't care if they're famous. You
Yeah.
know, get on their Facebook page and
Usually
reach out.
they don't even care that they're famous.
They don't care that they're famous.
Yeah, that's cool. As far as like owning a studio, is there any advice or let's say challenges that you run up against in having this place over the last 13 years?
As far as having the studio, getting over the fact that I'm not in LA or New York or Miami or one of those places. There are definitely advantages to being in that kind of geographical area, but that's not a game. That doesn't mean you're dead in the water right off the bat.
Right.
So don't let that be a detrimental to your thinking process. The challenge for me is keeping my time scheduled reasonably so that I can get the stuff back to the people in a timely manner to which they want it.
Sure.
That's always been a challenge for me. Where's my project? And I'm hopefully getting better at that.
Yeah.
So, but if you're giving them a quality result, hopefully, which I'd like to think I am, that they'll be patient, you know, and you're giving them what they want, and it sounds great. So,
I think too with that, as far as the timing of things, it's kind of setting the expectation with people, and honestly, if you could turn around their project in a couple days, you probably wouldn't be as good as you
probably
are.
Wouldn't be as good as it was.
And also, you know, you're busy, and that's because you do good work. So, sometimes obviously everyone wants their project yesterday, but
I've had people call me in the car on the way home after the tracking session and say, "Are the mixes done yet?" No, but thanks for checking in. So
that's funny. So, would you do it again? Would you build this place again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There were probably some gear purchases that hindsight's 2020 that I may not have done, or some stuff that I would have bought sooner. Not to, Gavin Haverstick, but not to be too, but the main thing I can say is get somebody like you involved at the beginning.
Sure.
Some people are like, well, is that really the most important thing? Yeah, you can have the great equipment, best equipment in the world in a room that sounds like, and you're going to get a recording that sounds like, so if the room doesn't sound good, the recording probably won't sound good.
Yeah. It's not the most, I'd say, I mean, I know it's what I do for a living, but it's not the most exciting part about building a studio is hiring an acoustical consultant, but it is the thing that lays the foundation for everything else.
And for me, it was too. And speaking with you at the beginning, some of the guys that you had worked with, which was really cool hearing you tell stories about that stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whose names you can mention, but you've done some NASCAR people's home theaters, and you've done some big things for other people. And it's like hearing you talk about those people and how cool they were was inspiring.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really admire your business and what you've been able to do with that also.
Thank you. It's funny to see it because like I say all the time, like when I started Haverstick Designs, I thought, okay, well, it's just going to be me in an office until I retire, and I'll do cool projects and I'll handle every aspect of it myself, and that's it. And now, like, fast forward, it's last month was 14 years for us, which is very cool.
Yeah, man.
Thanks. And it's now I have 6 employees, and I always just surround myself with people better than me at what they do, and it just
That's
makes
got to be a
for
challenge for you because you know.
not really. They especially like, I mean, there's definitely I'm just always trying to learn, and when I surround myself with people, it's just like they're really great at this aspect or this aspect. It just makes for a better result. Like some people don't want to. It's weird as a business person. Some people don't want to hire someone better than them because it's of an ego thing. But for me, it's just like I do the same thing with my band. Like all the people that play in my band are better than me at
Rivet
playing music.
Shack, Rivet Shack.
Yeah, a little plug for Rivet Shack, which I've actually thought about this, and I'm going to ask you, see if you're up for it, is that sometime in my life, I want to record a Rivet Shack EP or album and do a different song in different studios around the country that we've done.
I
Are you in
would
for that?
love to do that.
That'd be pretty fun.
That would be a blast.
It'd be an expensive project because there's airfare and we'd have to fly around, but this one's drivable, so,
Yeah.
so we could definitely do that. So maybe I'll hit you up for that at
Absolutely.
some point. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, Eric.
I appreciate you coming in.
This
Thank
is
you very
super
much.
fun, and it's always good to check in and just like I mean, what you've built here, not just built the studio, but the business and the reputation and everything you do is just amazing. So
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode and being a part of the S.O.U.N.D project. If you have any ideas for future podcast episodes, feel free to email us at info@haversickdesigns.com, and we'll see you next week.